This is Robin Minds. Welcome. My name is Ebuka Obiuchandu. Thanks a lot for joining us. We're finally in the second tenure of President Muhammadu Buhari. It looked like the first 4 years was never going to come to an end, but it did. And on the 29th of May, which was on Wednesday, Mr. President was sworn in for his second term, and we're looking forward to great things. Unfortunately, we didn't get a speech from him, so we're not sure what to expect per se with regards to this next 4 years, but there are speculations or talk about the fact that we'll be getting a speech on the 12th of June, which is now officially Democracy Day. We're going to be looking at what to expect from the government. I don't know that we know for sure, but I mean, Nigerians do have expectations and hopes for what they hope to see between now and 2023. And I have here with me Rotimi Sankore. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
Yeah, I want to start with the speech talk I just mentioned. Do you think Nigerians made a little too much out of that? I mean, we did hear that we'll be getting a speech anyway on the 12th of June. Were we overreacting with the fact that Mr. President didn't speak to us?
No, there's no overreaction. We should know what to expect over the next 4 years, and we don't.
Yeah. So ideally, we should have gotten a speech.
Ideally.
But the 12th of June is just a few weeks away, I believe, in 2 weeks. So hopefully we'll be looking forward to that. But I'm looking forward to talking about expectations now and looking at the last 4 years. A lot of people are there's a lot of cautious optimism is what I would call it by a lot of people. Do you share that sentiment?
Cautious optimism.
Yours is not close to that.
No, not at all. I mean, not from what we've seen so far. Not from what we've seen so far. Having said that, I mean, we must always emphasize that a lot of the problems that this current government has not been able to solve are cumulative, that is, accumulated over several governments,
yes,
over several decades, which also includes President Buhari in his first coming as an army general, and in all the other roles that he has played as the last military administrator of Northeast Nigeria, first governor of Borno State in 1976, and so forth, Federal Commissioner for Petroleum. So even though it is cumulative, that also includes him in several guises. And he's the president now, so he owns the problems. If you are president, government is continuous. You tell us what your proposed solutions are.
Yeah. And we spent a lot of the last 4 years hearing from the government the talk of how the last 16 years, at least 16 years before they came into power, were such a disaster by the PDP, and this is why things are going to be hard to fix. Is that argument still going to be tenable, you think, going into the next 4 years? Because, I mean, 16 years was a long time.
Yes, but just going back to what I said earlier, it's not a 16-year problem. It's closer to a 50-year problem, which includes the president himself. So they can't just put it at the doorstep of the PDP. If they are talking of the immediate past, yes, but don't forget, a lot of the people in PDP have moved to APC. So what does that mean? It is the responsibility of PDP.
So it's almost a continuum.
Yes, it's a continuum. The lines are completely blurred, so we can't go with that narrative that PDP caused the problem.
Yeah.
The problem has been cumulative. It includes PDP. It includes current leading APC members that were leading members of PDP. That line is blurred. That narrative doesn't work.
Yeah. Are there sectors that you look at in the last 4 years that actually give you some hope? Because I said cautious optimism there. You didn't particularly seem to agree with that. I know for a lot of the sectors, people are not necessarily excited. Security hasn't done very well. The anti-corruption war, people are not sure how it's going. The economy, of course, hasn't been healthy. Are there sectors you look at that even just give you some hope with regards to the next 4 years?
In terms of proposed solutions, no. In terms of proposed solutions, no. There is no sector that you can look at the problem and look at the proposed solution and think, yes, they've got this one right, that in 4, 8, or 12 years, it will be sorted.
Not even infrastructure?
No, because there isn't an understanding of scale. I mean, look at electricity, which is the key issue in infrastructure. I mean, no country anywhere ever got industrialized without power. And Nigeria generates less than 10% of the power that we need. To make real progress, we need at least 160,000 megawatts or more for our population size and our economic size. You know, we're at 4,000 megawatts. You know, Qatar, the leader of Qatar came here a few weeks ago, and we are pleading with Qatar to invest to solve our problems. You know, Qatar generates 10,000 megawatts plus very easily. And that's a country where the population of Qatar is the same as 2 local governments in Lagos. And they generate 10,000 megawatts. So, I mean, there is no real hope. You know, in Nigeria, average citizens spend on alternate power equivalent of our national budget, well over 7 trillion naira, just to provide alternate power. And that just for diesel and petrol, and spend about $13 billion actually buying the generators. Imagine what that kind of disposable income would do for the economy. And this is a conservative estimate. You know, if 20 million households spend 1,000 naira a day, that's 30,000 in a month. You know, multiply, do the necessary multiplication. That's 600 billion. You know, times 12 months, 7.2 trillion. Where, you know, we don't manufacture solar panels here.
Yeah. We hear, sorry to cut you there, because we hear so many reasons why the power sector is not doing as well as it should be. We have, quote unquote, private hands now running these power generation companies. The Minister of Power, Works and Housing has been touted as one of the few success stories so far in this government, you know, with regards to how much of a problem the power sector has been and the plans they might have for the sector. You don't see any progress at all being made in the next 4 years? Because I mean, I know that the last 4 years were not necessarily the greatest, but I mean, we're seeing. I mean, I didn't have a meter, for example, for the longest time, but meters are becoming a little more available. Things like that are starting to happen.
But it's not meters that is the problem. It's the scale of your generation and distribution. So if you're at 4,000 or less, sometimes when the national grid collapses, sometimes it's less than 1,000 for 201 million people. Yeah.
So what do we do with these discos now? Because everybody says that they might be the problem. The privately owned discos.
No, it's not a... Well, I mean, the discos are a problem somewhere down the value chain. Yes. The real problem is that we're not even generating enough. You know, last year, there was a government delegation to Germany to go and look at their power generation. In Germany, when winter sets in October till February, March, you know, the daylight is, you know, very short for about 6 months. They generate, you know, close to 40,000 megawatts using renewables, sun and wind. We have sunlight here every day. I mean, why can't we even hit 50,000 megawatts? So the approach is wrong. The understanding is wrong. We have one national grid. There is no federal country on this planet that has one national grid. It's insane. How does that happen?
Yeah. I know, let's leave power for a bit now, because I know whenever we talk about, you know, Nigeria and its issues, and especially when governments come in, like this one, this government is focused a lot on security, power, anti-corruption, and the economy. One thing that seems to be forgotten a lot, and which is particularly painful to me with regards to the last 4 years in particular, is education, which is fundamental to a lot of the issues we have in Nigeria today.
Fundamental to everything.
Looking forward to the speech on the 12th of June, but I don't know if that's going to be a focal point for the next 4 years. But with the last 4 years, there's no hope. There was no single reforms in that sector. I don't know what you're looking forward to.
Well, again, there is poor understanding of the solution, and that's where the problem is. So the government says, by its own admission, there are only 10 million children out of school. Okay. So 10 million children out of school, how many classrooms do we need for them? If it's 25 kids a class, that's about 400,000 classrooms that we need. If you want to categorize it into schools, so let's say it's A, B, C, D, E, class 1 to 6, that's about 13,300 schools.
At the least.
At the very least that we need. So we are short 400,000 schools. We are short 400,000 teachers. We are short about 13,300 schools. That's just primary and secondary education. Has the government come out with a plan that says this is the plan to build those schools over 8 years and train those teachers over 8 years? Bear in mind, over 7 million kids are born in Nigeria every year. So this problem can only get worse. And education is key to security. So if you look at Northeast and Northwest, where the population, total fertility has just gone through the roof, one farmer feels he's entitled to, 3 or 4, wives in quotes, first girls into marriage. They have 5, 6, 7 children each. That guy is responsible for anything from 24 to 30 children. And the state governments are not investing in education. The UBEC funds, they don't even access it.
But are the funds there? Because I want to read a very quick quote from Mr. President during the campaign. Like I said, we haven't heard his speech yet for the next 4 years. And he said something along the lines of, we are not unmindful of the funding challenges faced by the education sector, occasioned by dwindling resources and other competing national needs. We will, however, continue doing the needful to improve the nation's educational sector within available limited resources.
What does within available national resources mean? All the state governors have this strange atrocity called security votes, where if you aggregate it on geopolitical zones easily over every administration, 4 years or so, depending on how rich that zone is, that security vote will amount to anything from 60 billion to 100 billion. Are they investing it in education? No. What are they doing with it? Nobody knows. So when they say within available resources, what exactly does that mean? Education is not a security issue. Where do they think the bandits and extremists are coming from? At the height of the Boko Haram insurgency, 83% of all males in Yobe did not have access to education. In Borno, it was 63%. The outgoing governor of Borno built 40 glossy schools with air conditioners and all kinds of things. The money he could have used to build 300 or 400 schools, around all the local governments to ensure that more kids are in school. I mean, people mock the Jakonde schools in Lagos, but many of the doctors and engineers we have today went to those schools. In fact, if people remember, there was a time when the military governor before Jakonde and Jakonde, they doubled the time for the school system. So there was morning and afternoon and evening. And when they looked at the population growth and realized that that wouldn't do, they built those Jakonde schools everywhere. So, I mean, what stops them from doing this? Education now is a security issue.
I understand your point, and it's obvious that it's a crisis with regards to the need for these schools and all. But some will even tell you that even the ones that exist now, the quality is even nothing to write home about. I mean, everybody who can in any way does not send their kids to government schools anymore. So with regards to quality even, are we even on the right path?
No, because the right investment is not being made in the schools. How many of those schools have libraries? I mean, when I was in secondary school, I went to Government College Umuahia. When I was in secondary school, there are some of us that we are called library rats. We just bury ourselves in the library. How many secondary schools now have libraries? How many communities have libraries? The investment in the education sector is so poor. So it's quantity and quality. So the government's own figures, 10 million kids out of school, 400,000 classes that we need. There are unemployed teachers in Nigeria. How does that happen when you need 400,000 teachers, but we have unemployed teachers in Nigeria? Also, as with many sectors in Nigeria, we don't make the things that we need. So all the things you will expect in a school, in terms of laboratory, in terms of computers, we don't make those things. There is a reason why China is the manufacturing hub of the world. All the high-tech companies go there and manufacture. They invested in education over about 25 years. Science, technology, engineering, math. That's where their employment opportunities are. If we don't industrialize
deliberately,
yes, then we can't create the jobs. Oil doesn't create jobs.
Do you think this is, just before we go now, because, it looks like the brain drain is back. There's a deluge of people live in the country, to put it mildly. Everybody who knows somebody, or at least is even the person leaving. Canada, there's a new visa regulation every day we wake up now.
Sadly.
Do you see that slowing down?
No, because a lot of the young people can't see any future for themselves in the country. And key ministers that should understand this, Minister of Planning, Minister of Economic Development, youth, let's not even mention labor and employment. That minister, only heaven knows what is going on upstairs there. The guy says that
we have enough doctors.
That we have enough, and he's a doctor, and he doesn't know that Nigeria, for our population size, needs about 500,000 doctors, and we have less than 40,000, and that includes him. And that includes Enyelama, the Minister of Trade, who are not practicing, and the Senate President, and so forth. So when you look at that area, it's quite clear that a lot of the young people just look at the government policy, look at their future. They don't see any intersection, and they all make plans to leave.
What does that hold for the future for us?
It's a disaster, because it means that our most brilliant minds are when we were in school, we were even...
Can governments stop brain drain?
Of course they can't. Of course they can't, because they are not offering the opportunities. They are not offering the opportunities. We see Nigerians working in space programs in other countries. We see Nigerians running government departments in other countries. Should we start? We won't even get to 5% before the program is over. If those people were here, if those people could come back, just basic things, electricity, education, housing. There is a housing deficit of about 19 million. What's the plan to bridge that? The minister says there is no cheap housing, there is no affordable housing because there is no affordable material. Why don't we make the material here? NEPA, we talked about electricity. The other day, they found how many containers of electricity equipment that had been lost for years in the port. The fact that we don't make anything for anything that we need, and there is no deliberate policy that says these are milestones in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, the kids look at it and just say, there's nothing for us here. Sadly.
Okay. Well, I know that's actually the sentiment of a lot of Nigerians today. Not a lot of hope, but hopefully Mr. President's speech on the 12th of June will give us some hope.
We can do it.
Yeah.
We just need to look at the problem, look at the solutions, approach it the proper way. The public policy planning is not up to scratch. Your budget is a statement of intention, of your priorities. It's not up to... It can be done. Countries like Singapore did it. And these are city-states. They did it just by fixing education first. And so it's not that it can't be done. It's not completely hopeless. But unless there is a clear plan reflected in public policy, planning, budgeting, investment, then most young people will look at it and think that there is no hope, that the government is too disconnected
from the people. Thank you very much, Rotimi, for being here today. Looking forward to the 12th of June, the almighty day, to hear what Mr. President has to say. Hopefully there's some hope in his speech.
Thank you. Don't just stand there teasing me.